If you can't get what you want done within that 8 hours, then it's not the amount of hours that you're pulling, it's the quality of the work that you're doing.
Hmm.
It would be much more advantageous for you to keep your life and enjoy it because you only get one and you're definitely going to die sometime.
Hmm. You're listening to The Mindful Hustle, the podcast where we blend mindset, identity, and manifestation to fuel business breakthroughs. I'm Donnie, and if you know deep down that your inner world creates your outer results, welcome home. Quantum theory and multiple manifestation studies suggest that your beliefs literally collapse potential realities into form. In other words, you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. That's the work we do at Reality Realization Institute, aligning your identity with the version of you that already has everything you desire. Book your free strategy call at realityrealization.org/call. Now, let's hop in today's show. Today's guest is Nicholas Capone, with over 15 years of experience in the entertainment industry. From storytelling on screen to building projects behind the scene, Nicholas brings a wealth of insight into creativity, perseverance, and what it really takes to thrive in a high stakes, high vision world. In this episode, we explore his journey, the mindset behind longevity in the industry, and how purpose and passion continue to shape his path. Welcome on to the show.
Thank you for having me here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Was there a moment in your life or business when something just clicked and everything changed? Perhaps a mindset shift or a realization that really reshaped your path?
Yes. Yes. It's happened several times. 15 years is quite a time for that to happen. And it happened quite a few times. But one time in particularly when it happened was I used to, especially when I was kind of in my younger days, I definitely was a lot more so about hustling for the sake of being able to get the most that I could out of things. And I was always very, very passionate about what I was doing, my work ethic and everything else. And the shift came when I had gotten myself to the point where I was trying so hard to be perfect so often. And I remember one day I was just kind of sitting there at a coffee table and I was like, other people work for me. It's not always about me sometimes. Other times it's definitely about the people that you can serve as well. And that kind of was really a shift because I was always so hard on myself. I would always want to be constantly going at 150% all the time. Other people were just kind of there because they needed a job.
Hmm.
And but a lot of people kind of paint employees like that, like they're bad employees, but they're really not. It's just they're employees on their way to a different journey somewhere else. I've certainly have been that employee before, and before I even got into my career, I was not meant to be a pizza delivery driver for my entire life. It was just kind of something I was doing for the time. And so I've run into people like that. And when I made that shift to kind of move from more so like, serving myself and looking to get things out of it for myself and more so into what could I do for other people, I started making a lot more money.
Yeah,
You know,
that's very deep. I like that perspective. Something I'm curious about was the journey that you took to get where you are now. So tell me a little bit about what really got you into acting. How did that whole story begin for you?
my whole family are musicians.
Hmm.
And I grew up playing music my whole life. I was a drummer. I learned a little bit of guitar and some singing and stuff like that. But my main instrument was drums. And I got accepted into a college in LA called Musicians Institute. I worked at a place, I don't even think it's open anymore. It was called Seafair. It was one of like those buffet restaurants where all the servers are dressed as pirates. So I used to go in there and be a pirate for a little while, and that's kind of how I made my money to be able to move to LA, all this stuff. And I finally got out there, and the counselor called me and told me that I was short the money to be able to go to the school.
Hmm.
And I didn't plan any kind of reserve money, but also I was told that I got a full scholarship to go to the school.
Hmm.
And I thought that full scholarship meant that that was all the money. And come to find out, it was not all the money. It was the most amount of money that they would give someone who they were going to give money to. But nobody went to the school for free. And so, myself being from New Jersey, I was stuck in California, with no money, just kind of stranded there, no family around to be able to support me or anything like that. And so I had to do what I had to do. I had to get that job. That's just a job to be able to make some money. And I worked at a tattoo shop over on Hollywood Boulevard. Do you remember the show Heroes?
I believe so, yeah.
It was a superhero show. It was on, it's long done now. So, anyway, that show was shooting on the side, like the side street where the shop was on a corner. And so, on the little side street there, they were shooting the show. And I remember my boss was like this really, he was like this really cheap guy where he was like always trying to like, and he knew that sometimes the production assistants, they walk around and they have a little bit of extra money in their pocket just in case people complain or something like that. They'll just say, hey, here you go. Here's $100. Just keep it quiet. Let us get through the shooting day.
Hmm.
He knew that. And so he set up a whole part of the store that wasn't even there before. Like he pulled it was like a garage sale. Like he just had weird shoes and just weird stuff that wasn't even like they had dust on them. It wasn't like they were brand new, ready to sell. And so, but he opened up the whole side, and so that way he can complain about the thing being open, right? And so the time finally came for right. Of course, I was the guy who had to man it, like so I was over there, right? Just so no one was buying anything. I remember I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and it was nighttime. It was getting a little bit colder. I remember looking over at my boss, and he was screaming at a production assistant. I looked inside, and all the tattoo artists were just like falling asleep in their chairs. Everyone just looked so miserable, and I was hungry myself because I'd been out there all day and it was starting to get cold. Somebody from the show came up and offered me a plate of food. On set you have craft service and they have a whole buffet style worth of food. So they brought me some food and I was so grateful to get the food, and as I was eating it, I was looking at them and what they were doing and all of them looked happy. Even like the people that had to do the rougher jobs like carrying the lights and the sound guy and stuff like that. Take any construction company. They don't just show up to work with a smile on their face. A lot of the time, they're just like dead tired. These people weren't like that. These people were happy to be there. It was fun. They were having fun. They were joking around. And I was just like, I don't really care what I do, but I want to feel the way that they're feeling.
Yeah.
And so at the time, the school didn't have dorm rooms, but they had apartment complexes that they had deals with. And a couple of actors worked well, they lived in that building there. And so I asked them, like, how do I get into this? How do I start doing it? And they got me doing extra work. And so then I was a movie extra. And I was expecting, maybe like one time or two times or something like that. I mean, 2 weeks into it, I was working 7 days a week
Wow.
as an extra. Yeah, that's kind of how it got started anyway.
That's awesome. And so you mentioned before the show that from becoming an actor that later led you to become a producer and own a business in the industry. Tell me about what really made that journey unfold. What led you from rising up the ranks as an actor to then becoming a producer and getting to the business side of things?
So acting is a very, very funny business. You make a lot of money in a very short amount of time.
Hmm.
You'll do a project over the course of a couple of months and you'll make 5, 6 figures doing the project. And then for the next 3 months or 4 months, you pretty much don't have anything to do. You go from having no time in the day for yourself at all to having all day to do nothing. It gets very weird to be able to try to keep yourself motivated and keep stuff going.
Hmm.
You do have like auditions and things like that that you got to go out for. Sometimes your type is in and sometimes your type isn't in, and that's going to kind of determine what sort of auditions you get. So whenever that happened, the way I kind of combated that was I have a couple of sales jobs. So I used to sell cars, because car dealerships have a really, really high turnover. And so I would just go into the dealership and go make money like normal. And then around the time I was thinking I was about to do a movie, I would just fuck it up. When I would go do something to get myself fired, and then I would go do the movie. And then whenever I was done with the movie, I'd just get a job in another car dealership. That's pretty much the way I ran for a little while. Being a producer and being a car salesman have a lot of similarities. You're closing investors just the same way that you would close a customer. You're solving problems just the same way that you solve problems in car sales and make sure that you're getting them not only a car that they like, but the right car.
Hmm.
Negotiation obviously is a humongous part of being a movie producer. I studied it so hard when I was getting into car sales because I never sold a car before. I didn't know anything about that. I was fortunate enough to get in at a couple of dealerships where there were people that really took me under their wing and taught me how to do it. And those weren't just like skills for the dealership, they were overall skills for life. There's
Yeah.
still things that I use today. I've built several companies off of it. And it's helped me in my entertainment career and it's helped me pretty much all across the board. So when the opportunity came for me to be able to be a producer, I already had all the skill set that I needed. I started just producing things independently, if not my production, not my movie, but somebody's going to need $250,000 for something.
Hmm.
If I could get the investor book to be able to call around and get the money, then I'm sure they'll give me something on the side and I'll be able to do my thing. And so that's kind of how I started. And then I got more involved with other people's companies first and then eventually my own.
Wow. That's an
Mm.
amazing journey. I'm very curious. You mentioned how there was a progression where while you're getting acting work, you would work as a car salesman and you learn key skills during that job that you could leverage as in what you're doing as the executive producer. And I was curious, what were some of the skill sets on the mindset or perspective side that you gained during that time that kind of helped you along your journey?
One mindset that I definitely took on there is the realization that nothing is really impossible. I've seen so many people time after time where they would come into the car dealership wanting a specific car. One of the guys who trained me was like, if they come in asking for a specific car, you do not collect $200, go give them that car, and that's what you got to do. I've had other people that were like, you should ask why a couple times. The rule was three. So even if I knew something to be true, I still had to ask why 3 times in a row. So what car were you looking at? Oh, I was looking at this car. Okay, why are you looking at that car? Oh, because it's got this, 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 and this. And why do you want those features? Oh, because I take my kids to school and I got all this other stuff. By the third why, I know of a car that would be way better for them,
Mm,
and every single other salesman that they've met up to that point has just given them a price on that car.
hmm
Right. And so then they finally get to me and they're like, okay, I just want to see, I now gave them a different car that has a bunch of things that the other cars don't. And so they don't go home. They drive home in the new car. And so just like finding that patience in there and with nothing really being impossible, either is like my big lesson on that was I would see people sit there and try to close and try to close and try to close and try to close and they're there for 3 hours with somebody
hmm
and they're like, I'm at a dead end. There's nothing else I could do. There's no way I can go. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. They don't qualify for this. They don't have that. And I will watch another person that works there walk up and close that person in 10 minutes.
mm
And then it's like, but they don't, but here's the thing though, they don't say anything. They don't rub it in their face. They say nothing. They say, thank you. We'll be splitting the deal now. I get 50% of what all of everything you just did.
hmm
And then they just kind of move on. There's always a way to do something. Even if the solution is there is no solution, that's still a solution.
Hmm.
So knowing that it gives you a lot more confidence going into things because going into it, it has to turn out one way or the other. And, there is no negative in that. You can't give it a negative, especially in negotiation. There is no negative. There's only, here's what I want to do, here's what you want to do. Can it work? And if it can't, then it's not a bad thing because I'm not losing a deal. I haven't found the right one. I need to go find the right one.
hmm
But the whole time, you're only concerned about finding the right one. You're not concerned about whether or not the deal is going to work out. The deal is secondary. And I treat a lot of things in life like that.
hmm
I treat hiring like that. I treat finding a job like that. I treat business partners like that. It goes pretty much across the board with those types of things because you can't have too many feelings in anything. The only things that you should be having feelings in is your wife, your spouse, your family, the things that deserve your feelings. Money is not one of them.
Linda, something I'm curious about is the role of relationships in your journey. You mentioned When you first got into acting, it was due to being able to communicate with these individuals that allowed you to learn what it took to become an actor. When you went into car sales, it was the mentors you had who kind of guide you. What would you say is the role of relationships and mentors and guidance in the journey?
It's probably the most valuable thing. It's relationships. There's people now currently that I am way nicer to than what I have any business being. The only reason why I'm like that is because when I was in that situation, there were people that were way more nice than me than what they had any business being.
Hmm.
At the time when I did that, my next door neighbor, his name's Jackson McQueen. He is a stand up comedian. At the time, he was like one of the top three commercial actors in Los Angeles. He's right now, I think he's touring with Matt Rife right now. He got me into stand up. I did do stand up for a little while, kind of to get over the whole stage fright thing of acting.
Hmm.
And he hosted the open mic. So he would bring me to the open mic. I mean, he was like, Jackson's like, I don't want to say, he'd be so pissed. Not considerably older, but he's older than me. He's old enough to be my big brother.
Hmm.
And so he knew I didn't really have a whole lot of money. I wasn't established. I didn't have any of that stuff. So even the train, if he was with me, he would pay for my train ticket. After the show, he had this weird instinct where he could just, after the time that we did the open mic and stuff like that, right? And I did the stand up, we would be driving back. He had a car. I didn't have a car. If he had his car there, he would drive us home and he would stop by In and Out on the way home and get me a burger and fries and food. When your whole diet consists of ramen noodles, it's like you might as well have made Thanksgiving dinner at that point.
Yeah.
There's tons of others as well, like people who really, a lot of them very famous and successful now. I kind of suspect that's how they got there in the first place
Hmm.
by treating other people like that and having to go through everything that they had to go through and just kind of like sticking with it. Relationships have also gotten me things that I probably shouldn't have had.
Hmm.
My company's an independent film finance company. Independent means that we do it by ourselves. We don't have the studio connections to go get Matthew McConaughey,
Hmm.
but that doesn't mean I can't go get him. And the reason why I can get him is because of relationships.
Yeah.
Um, and so that a lot of the times it plays a really, really big role, especially in acting as well. Casting directors, it's very important. I have relationships with casting directors that aren't even in the same state as me. They're all over the country, and most of the time I don't even audition for them. But just the one time I am, that's money and a lot of it. So, I mean, it's very important and it kind of does something to your psyche as well. There's nothing to give you a positive boost like doing something nice for someone else, especially if they can't do anything nice for you back.
Something I'm curious of is what do you see as the current vision you have for the next stage of your life, whether that be growing your business or pursuing more acting? What does that look like for you right now?
I have a video game company, graphic games. There is a large market trend right now between video games becoming movies, movies becoming video games. We like to do that together as part of the IP. When we raise money for a film, we put an extra $1 million, $2 million, something like that into the budget for marketing expenses, and that's what the marketing expenses goes to. It goes to create a game based on the movie.
Hmm.
Doing this has fantastic potential there. There's a lot of things that we can learn by first putting out the movie and then putting out the video game. There's a lot of things that we can learn by putting out the video game and then the movie. It gives us ideas for sequels. It gives us all kinds of stuff. It's a much closer relationship with our audience than what we would otherwise have.
Yeah.
And so, what I really want to do, I'm also represented for film and television, as well as voiceover and commercial. I'm already doing VO for video games. That would be a nice scenario for me to get one project, in which case I'm the producer. Therefore, I say how much I make as a producer and how much I make as an actor. And also, I get two checks per every one project I do. And I don't mean two checks like one as a producer, one as an actor. I mean two acting checks, two producing checks.
Oh.
Plus, I own half the company that produces it, and I own the video game company as well. So, so
That's
that's like,
awesome.
if you've ever played Monopoly, you know what I'm talking about. Like, there's a lot of money coming in, you know.
Yeah. On. That's amazing to hear.
Mhm.
Well, this has been such a powerful conversation. Thank you for sharing so openly on your story and what it was like moving from actor to producer and what you're doing now. Something I like to do at the end of these episodes is to ask if you had to give one insight to creators out there trying to reach a new level of life while being fulfilled as they do so, what would you tell those out there?
I would tell them that a lot of people put so much focus on themselves and how they're doing. There's a lot of pressure in the media, online, of how your work ethic should be, how hard you should work, and how many days you should work, and what time you should wake up. One thing that I've learned throughout my life is that none of it matters.
Hmm.
I've tried waking up at 4 a.m. I've also woken up at noon. If I pull a good day, I pulled a good day. Money is coming in. It does matter how many hours you pull. A lot of people try to overdo that. They think the more hours that they work, the better their product is going to be, the more prepared they're going to be for it. It is very underestimated the power of getting enough sleep, having your health in order, spending time with your family, spending time to yourself, knowing who you are as a person, whether it be through meditation or yoga or just taking a couple miles worth of a walk and talking to yourself. Those things really help. And I've met people pulling 16, 17, 18-hour days that don't get anything done.
Hmm.
To be completely honest with you, if you pull an 8-hour day and you can't get what you done, you can't get what you want done within that 8 hours, then it's not the amount of hours that you're pulling, it's the quality of the work that you're doing.
Hmm.
And so it would be much more advantageous for you to keep your life, and enjoy it because you only get one, and you're definitely going to die sometime. And rather focus on how can I do what I'm doing better and more efficiently. And it'll give you a lot more peace for yourself, and it'll give you a lot more time with your family. And, so that way you're not like dying thinking to yourself, I shouldn't have pulled 12 hours. You'll be better for it as a person.
Thank you for sharing that with the world.
And thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. And for those of you out there listening, if this episode stirred something in you, if you feel like you're ready to grow from the inside out and create the kind of life and business that reflects your highest self, remember, you can book a free discovery call at realityrealization.org/call. Now, before we wrap, Nicholas, where can listeners connect with you and learn more about what you're doing right now?
You can catch me on Instagram, Twitter. All of those are at Nicholas Capone. And I'm also on LinkedIn, but my name on there is also Nicholas Capone. It's Nicholas Capone all across the board.
Well, thanks again to Nicholas for sharing such real and thoughtful perspectives. And to all of you tuning in, remember, you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. So if you want to change your results, start by becoming the version of you who already has them. This is the Mindful Hustle. Till next time, be bold, be intentional, and keep realizing your reality.